Let's welcome Dale, Witherington, and Dangerous Christianity.
Thank you, Brother Bill. Good morning. Well, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here this morning. This is going to be fun because you don't have to listen to me all day. You get to do some work. This is a workshop. And I want to walk you through this process of what we call Dangerous Christianity and just a little bit of background on Dangerous Christianity. If we were an athletic team, and those of you who don't like sports, don't tune me out right now. But if we were a football team, a great football team has an offensive playbook, it has a defensive playbook, and you've got special teams. Dangerous Christianity is the offensive playbook. It is the how do we advance the kingdom playbook. How do you get involved in being engaged as an individual called by God for advancing the kingdom as an offensive participator. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's what this part is about. We've got a whole separate course called America at a Crossroads. That's the defensive playbook. Now you can catch the presentation of Dangerous Christianity in presentation form. I think we did it once in about 7 weeks or something like that, but you can catch it at encountertruth.com. That is a subscription program, but every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central from 9 to 10, I've got the Dangerous Christianity program at Encounter Truth. And, maybe 4 or 5 people locally are on live, but most people catch it on the archives later on, because who wants to be listening to some guy talking to them at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night? Wednesday nights, yes, if you want to catch it live. So at encountertruth.com. And there's lots of different programs at Encounter Truth. So ours is called Dangerous Christianity. And I spent, maybe 7 weeks teaching the course Dangerous Christianity. Then we went into America's Birth Certificate, which is a study of the biblical foundations of the Declaration of Independence. And now we are in the defensive playbook, America at a Crossroads. And this Wednesday, we're on week 17 or 18. Because that is a study, several weeks, that describes the Judeo-Christian heritage upon which the nation was founded and the 5 prevailing worldviews or ideologies that are working to take America down. And we are about to wrap that up. We're wrapping up the 4th ideology. We'll get into the 5th, and then we'll move on from there. But you can get a lot more information, perhaps, if you decide you want to go to Encounter Truth and check it out there. Fair enough?
So that would be archived to the ones you've already
Correct.
done?
Yes, the ones we've already done, you'll have it. And it's a subscription. I don't know, it's like $20 a month or something like that. But if it's anyway, you can check it out. You can check it out for free, and then if you want to subscribe, you can. That is just the program that they do that we're part of. We try to keep things up to date on our Restore Minnesota website. And that website is restoremn.org. Restoremn.org. So that's at least some preliminary. So how did we come up with this Dangerous Christianity? How did we even come up with the terminology? There were actually 3 different, 3 unrelated events or occurrences that led to the name Dangerous Christianity. The first is a friend of mine, Pastor Jeff Evans. Jeff runs the Church Ambassador Network for Minnesota Family Council. Some of you are familiar with MFC and the great work they do. And Jeff and I have been partners at the state capitol. For those of you who don't know, there's a number of us who work independently, voluntarily, as chaplains, pastors to our state legislature. This Monday morning, we launch this coming session. You can be in prayer about that, by the way. This is going to be a really tough year, this election year. Our legislators are getting an awful lot of prayer, and we open up with an hour prayer session. So Monday morning from 8:30 to 9:30 in the Rotunda. You're welcome to come on down. It's a public event of prayer for our state leaders. So Jeff and I and others have been doing that. Jeff and I were talking one day, and we were discussing one of the issues going on in the state of Minnesota. And that is, how does the church most effectively reach the immigrant population in the state of Minnesota? Because there are over 1 million immigrants in the state of Minnesota. And many of them, as we're aware, are Somali Muslims. They've come here from a great civil war going on in Somalia. But if you've ever looked at the constitution of Somalia, you understand that the only exposure people from Somalia ever have when it comes to any kind of religious or geopolitical exposure is Islam. And we're not going to have time to go into Islam today, but Islam is completely contradictory to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And from a political standpoint, it is completely contradictory to the Constitution of the United States. So if you're not aware of that and we want to get a discussion, that's a whole separate thing. That's part of our American Crossroads training. And Jeff and as we were talking, he said, you know what we need to do, because we've got so many folks coming from Somalia, we need to have them calling their friends saying, don't come to Minnesota. Minnesota is a very dangerous place for you, because if you come to Minnesota, you're going to hear about Jesus. So that's one of the ways the term dangerous Christianity came about. Here's another way dangerous Christianity came about. A counselor in New York, a Christian counselor in New York, decided he was gay. And he decided that any attempt by Christians to teach people in the gay lifestyle what the gospel has to say, and to help those people find Christ and move into a straight lifestyle, a biblical lifestyle, would be dangerous Christianity. The church should have nothing to do with helping people find a straight path, if you will. So that was another piece that popped up that lent to the title. And then the third is, some of you will know Dr. John Piper. You know that name. I was privileged to have Dr. Piper as my Greek professor when I was in college. Just a tremendous man of God. And he often talked, and he's written over the years, about the fact that Jesus was identified by the Pharisees, by the Sanhedrin, as a dangerous man. He was dangerous because his message was jeopardizing Israel to their Roman overlords. And so it was necessary to sacrifice the life of this dangerous man for the sake of the nation. And that those people who were following him would be dangerous if they continued to follow the message Jesus was teaching. So if the enemies of Christ believe that the followers of Christ are dangerous, I decided that's probably a pretty good thing for us to be called, are dangerous Christians. So that's kind of how this got started. So dangerous Christianity, how to be a biblical Christian in a non-biblical world. We are living in a world, as we're all aware, that is increasingly antagonistic to people of faith. Some of you will know the name George Barna. George Barna is a leading Christian researcher, has been for decades. He does an awful lot of writing on what's going on in the church in America. And on a call with George about 2 months ago, he said, here's how far we've come in America. About 6% of Americans, so 6 people out of 100. So in a room this size, and I'm not sure there's even 50 in the room, maybe close, but so 2 or 3 of you in this room, okay, out of the whole room, would have a biblical worldview. So only 6 out of 100 in America have a biblical worldview. That means 94 out of 100 do not. And many of those 94 are not just kind of placid about the whole thing, but they are actively antagonistic. And you get groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and the ACLU and others that will do everything they possibly can to make us believe that Christianity has nothing to do with our nation, that we are a secular nation. The Democratic Socialists of America put out a 28-page document during the Biden-Harris transition last December to re-secularize America, re-secularize the Constitution. Well, we were never secular in the first place. So you can't re-secularize something that was never secular in the first place. But that's what they want to do. But the point being, we do live now in an environment that is obvious, is very non-biblical. So how do we live as biblical citizens in a non-biblical world? So that's where this is meant to go today. All right? So let's kind of dive in. Restore Minnesota. I'm not going to go into details as to how we started, but Restore Minnesota is is our organization, and Restore Minnesota exists to promote biblical citizenship. And here's some key words, okay? They're all a bunch of E's to make it easy. To educate, equip, empower, and encourage Holy Spirit-led engagement. Why? What are we doing? In order to restore righteousness in Minnesota. That's what we believe our role is the restoration of righteousness. And we do it county by county, community by community, family by family. Because the family is the core institution that God created. And anything that we do as Christians needs to target the bolstering of the family. And then that helps us to bolster communities, counties, state, and so forth. And we're going to do that through a spiritual, first, and civic transformation based on the gospel or the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. So that's why Restore Minnesota exists. And this is the overwhelming, or the overarching banner, that'd be more appropriate, the overarching banner of the whole dangerous Christianity concept and where we're going to take this today. So there's the, isn't that beautiful? That's called freepowerpoint.com. All kinds of great all kinds of great templates at freepowerpoint.com. So there's my commercial for them. And I thought it was really interesting that the American flag was just barely touching the state of Minnesota. The blue state of Minnesota. But it's waving and moving its way in. So that's okay. All right. So, all right. You've got your worksheet in front of you, your paper in front of you. Also, on your table is a sheet that's in the middle of the table asking for your name, your email address, and the phone number. Even if you don't want to give us your email address or your phone number, please at least write down your name. I just would kind of like to know who's here. But if you give us the email, if you give us your contact information, we will put you on our email list. I want you to know we protect our email list really, really closely, just because of the work that we do. So anytime we send out an email to the folks on our list, and they go out now to, I suppose it's close to a couple thousand people, it goes out blind copy. So you won't know each other's emails. We don't share it with anybody. It's just if you want to stay informed through the emails that go out, whether I send them out, whether Dan Montague, who is the overseer of our community action teams, which we may talk a little bit about as we wrap up today, or whether it's former Senator Dan Hall, who runs our Christians discussing politics and religion groups, CPR groups. Whoever of us is sending them out, they're coming out through our constant contact email list. It's blind copy. We protect it. If you still feel uncomfortable with that, that's fine. But if you wouldn't mind, if you want, that's what we're going to do with it. And we'll by the end of the day, we'll just collect them all, and my wife will protect them and get them in the bag. Okay. So, what are the objectives for today? Okay. Here are 3 objectives that you can write down for yourself. Objective number 1 is to define dangerous Christianity. Now, I just told you a little bit about where it came from, but to actually define it, we want to define that terminology. And quite frankly, I probably won't be the one to give you the definition. You're going to create your definition by the time we're done. All right? Definition, or the second objective, is to define biblical citizenship. I'm going to give you some biblical documentation about this, because in the church in America today, this is a real battle. We have way too many churches that don't understand the calling of the church in raising up righteous men and women as biblical citizens to help lead our nation. We have really abdicated our role and turned it over to the enemy. So we're going to define biblical citizenship. And I might be already stepping on some toes or have some neon lights flashing where you're going to say, wait a second, give me some biblical data on that. That's where we're going, okay? And then the third objective is to help you progress in becoming a dangerous Christian yourself. Emphasis is on the word progress, because there's no such thing as arriving. All right? We're all always in a constant mode of learning, growing, developing, being educated. And as long as we have breath, our physical age makes no difference. Okay? The minute we quit intentionally learning, the minute we intentionally quit saying there's more that I can do or become, that's when we really start dying. And that just doesn't work for me. Okay? So those are our 3 objectives. Now, here are 3 thoughts to ponder as we move into our objectives this morning. Okay, 3 key thoughts. And here's where I'm going to go from teaching to meddling. Okay? Number 1, God created a purpose. Then he created you to fulfill that purpose. God created a purpose. Then he created you to fulfill that purpose. Number 2, you did not come from your parents. You came through your parents. You did not come from, and I'm not tearing down whoever your parents are. I had great parents. In fact, I had a lot of them. My last name comes from my 3rd dad. Okay? I want you to really focus on that for a second. I want you to tie that to the first statement that God created a purpose and he created you to fulfill the purpose. What that really means is, it doesn't matter how you got here. There are no accidents.
Right.
And there are some, and maybe in this group, and I don't know you well. In fact, I don't know you at all. Let's just be careful. Okay, I don't know you. You don't know me. I don't know the circumstances surrounding your birth. But in any group of people, there are those whose arrival on this earth was less than ideal from a human standpoint, not from God's. Psalm 139 says you're fearfully and wonderfully made, which means when God made you, it says he formed you in your mother's womb. He didn't add any qualifications to how you got in the womb. And when he was done forming you, and when you arrived kicking and screaming, he didn't look at you and say, oops. He said, well done. That just hit somebody in this room in the heart. Because some of you have been carrying a lot of crap because of how you think you came into the world. And I want to help eliminate that. Okay? So I hope that does. Point number 3 are the 3 most important days of your life. Pastor Bill and I share a mutual beloved friend and mentor, John Maxwell. In fact, I think Bill's back there with the John Maxwell Team Yeti mug on his desk, drinking his 15th cup of coffee. 14th, okay. Now, Pastor Bill is part of John's team. I hope you know who Dr. John Maxwell is. John had a dramatic impact on my life as a young pastor. He's considered the world's #1 leadership guru. Incredible pastor, incredible man of God, incredible leadership developer. And John talks about the 2 most important days of your life, which I think he actually stole from Mark Twain. Borrowed. Sanctified borrowing. Okay? And I've added a 3rd, so let me tell you what they are. First most important day of your life is the day you were born. Second most important day of your life is when you discover why you were born. The third most important day of your life is when you decide to actually pursue the purpose for which you were born. There's an awful lot of people who are spending time trying to find out the reason why they were born. And they'll read books and they'll go to seminars and workshops and they'll gather all kinds of information and they'll get all the feel goods and the attaboys and attagirls and they'll leave say, man, that was awesome. And then they do nothing with it. Been there. Look, life is meant to be applied. So the third most important day of your life might become the first most important day of your life, because when you actually discover why God put you on the planet and you decide to pursue it, your life changes. It gets pretty exciting. And I think life's supposed to be an adventure. Doesn't mean it's always fun. Doesn't mean we always like it. There's stuff called testing, stretching, growing, pain, trials, temptations, and all those are meant to make us tough enough to do the work God's called us to do. Persecution. Yeah, I forgot persecution. Leave it to my own staff to tell me what I forget. Okay. My good friend Dan, who's now walking home. Yeah, long way. Yeah, exactly. Persecution. And you know what? Whether we like it or not only is it going on heavily against Christians worldwide, it's coming more here. Not saying we want it. I'm not saying, bring it on. No. But if we're not prepared, it's better to be prepared for something and not need it than need it, not be prepared. That's kind of, all right? So anything along that line, it's not meant to be fear-mongering, get you fearful, get you scared. Not at all. Go to Romans chapter 5. In those first few verses, that talks about what needs to happen in our character development and the perseverance that has to happen and the testing and the trials and the progression that the Apostle Paul writes that leads to us being a fully developed character. So what? So we can become a dangerous Christian. That's the purpose for all this stuff. All right? So, here's the first exercise that you're going to work on this morning. And I want you to take some time. And there are two questions that kind of overlap, so that's how come I put them up at the same time. Why are you here this morning? And what are you hoping to gain from this workshop? Now, I actually want you to take a couple minutes and just jot down a couple bullet points. And then I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. You're going to talk about it at your tables. Now, here's the only thing I'm going to ask. Okay, because some tables have got a lot more people sitting at tables than others. This is not the time to tell your life story or to preach at the whole table and to dominate discussion. This is simply the time to say, here's just a couple things. Here's why I came this morning. Here's what I'm hoping to get from this. All right? And then there might be time for some additional dialogue around that, but at least give everybody a chance to say something. All right? Fair enough?
Yeah.
Ready? Go. All right, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for some sharing. Now, Jesus did some sharing in John 17. John 17, that whole chapter, Jesus is praying, and he's talking to his Father about his followers, including you and me. If you're a follower of Christ, he was praying for you in this prayer. And that's why I call John 17 the Lord's Prayer, because he's actually praying. And the prayer that we typically refer to as the Lord's Prayer, which we're going to get into a little bit later today, and we keep talking about this day thing. We're going to be done about noon.
Okay, just so you know. I know you got to plan until noon. We're not going to extend it to like 3. The Our Father prayer that is typically referred to as the Lord's Prayer, I call it the disciples' prayer because he's teaching the disciples how to pray. Okay, but in John 17, he's praying himself, and in 17:3 he says, "And this is eternal life, to know you, the only true God." That's eternal life, knowing God. And then he says, "Father, I have glorified you by completing the task you've given me to do." That verse has been both a constant source of comfort and haunting virtually my whole Christian life, because I thought it's awesome to be able to tell the Father, I've completed the task you've given me to do. Have you ever said, Lord, I want to glorify you that way? What's my task? You ever been there? Yeah, okay, I'm hearing some, yeah. What's my task? I don't know what your task is, but that's part of what today's supposed to be about, is to help you maybe discover it or reinforce what you already know. So hopefully there's going to be some discovery here. But just imagine, if you would, in your own mind, imagine being able to look at the Father and say, I've glorified you by completing what you've asked me to do. Because that also implies that you have become who he's called you to be. The focal point of our faith is not first what we do, it's the first of who we are. And then doing what God's asking us to do out of the who we are. Okay? So, with that, we're going to do a little bit of study in Acts chapter 1, verse 8. So if you have a Bible and you'd like to flip there, whether it's paper or whether it's on your phone, you'll remember that Jesus is kind of giving some last instructions, and just before he ascends to heaven. So when they came together, they asked him, they meaning the disciples, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? And he said to them in verse 7, it's not for you to know the times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority, but you will, here's verse 8, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. That word witness or witnesses is really important here. So let me first walk you through some things that being a witness primarily is not. And some of you will identify personally with some of these things, and some of you, a picture of somebody else might come into mind with some of these things. So have fun with it, but take it to heart, because this is what a witness is not primarily. Primarily, a witness is not a preacher. Primarily, a witness is not a teacher. Primarily, a witness is not a prophet, especially the judgmental, condemning, accusing kind. Some of you are nodding your head to that one because you know what I'm talking about. Okay? How about not an evangelist? How about not an apologist, somebody who's defending the faith? These are the things that a witness primarily is not. So let's talk about what a witness primarily is. It's from the Greek word martyres. What does martyres sound like to you? Martyr. Okay, now, don't go too deep in the weeds with the term martyr here. Okay? But that's the word. The word is martyres, and it means these things. It means to bear witness, and that means to show that something exists or is true. It's the way you live, or it's what you have personally experienced. Your experience. Okay? It also means to testify. Think of a court. Think of being in court where you are asked to testify according to what you have seen. It means to be a witness. That means where you actually make a statement about what you saw or what you know. So you're standing on a street corner, you see a collision of two vehicles in the intersection, and you become an eyewitness. And when the police come to get a report and they're looking for who saw this, you say, here's what I saw. Okay? Here's what I know. To attest, affirm, or confirm. In other words, somebody else, you hear them share, this is what I saw. This is what happened. And you say, yeah, I saw the same thing. To speak well of. To speak well of. To approve. These are all things about what it means to be a witness. So, the next exercise we're going to do is going to be an exercise for you in your witness. So I'm going to put these questions on the screen, and then you're going to take some time doing some writing, and then we may have a little bit of time to do a little sharing around our table. So here's the first question. First question is, what was your life like before you met Jesus? Now, some of you, like my wife, you're going to go back to when you were like 3 because you've grown up knowing, but, a lot of folks in this room, you came to Christ at, a different time in life. I committed my life to Christ when I was a sophomore in high school. And I do remember what was life like before I came to Christ. All right? So, what was your life like before you met Jesus? The second question is, then how did you meet him? How did you get introduced to Jesus? How did you meet him? The third question is, how is your life different since you met him? How is life different for you since you met Christ? And here might be the most challenging one. Why do you continue to follow him? So, you're on assignment for about the next 15 minutes to work on those 4 questions. Ready, go.